Banjiva Korja. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Fireside Chat. This is our 63rd one, where I'm in conversation with a member of the Order of Bards, Ovates and Druids. I just realized as I was about to go live this evening that I forgot to send my reminder out to people. So I hope people turn up. I think, hi, Cindy from Virginia, and Sal for Cuiga Ulla, and hello, Celtic Shaman. So let me know where you're from. On this. Hi, Stephanie from Utah. Welcome back. That's lovely to see you. Ava from Belgium. Lovely. And Philippa from Crouch End. It's a great name, Crouch End. And hi from Aubrey. That's Texas, I think. John Faherty from Georgia. Lovely. We have Southern France, Minnesota. Wonderful. Essex. LA, Washington. Great. Vero Beach in Florida. I hope the weather is nice. Actually, it wasn't so bad today. We had frost, but I happened to be able to have a cup of coffee outside today. It was really, really lovely. And hi from Cornwall, Germany. Lovely. Oh, the Isle of Mull. Beautiful. I was in Mull, God, 2013. Beautiful. Southern California. Lovely. Northamptonshire. Well, you're all very welcome. And let me introduce you to my guest this evening. We're staying in Ireland and we're going to County Tipperary. And I'd like to introduce Mawie Barrett. Mawie, you're so welcome.
Thank you, Eimear. Nice to be here.
So you're in Tip, which is only it's the what would you say, the county across the border next door. So where you are, just let our viewers know what it's like where you are.
Yeah. So so it's the county next door to Kilkenny where you are, Eimear. I live. So Tipperary is a very big county. So it stretches all the way from Nina to Carr-Gomm. So I live way down in the south of the county, right, and near a place called Carr-Gomm, which is on one of the three sister rivers, the Nord, the Suir, and the Barrow. So it's a very, very lovely spot. I live I live out in the country, and I live. When I open my front door, Slieve na Man is in front of me. So Slieve na Man is this beautiful mountain with a cairn on the top, and it's Slieve na Man. It's called the Woman's Mountain. So it's a very, very lovely spot. But I'm not from there. My friend says that I grew up in County Waterford, which is another county, a coastal county. But my friend says that I was born in the UK and I ended up being bred in County Waterford and jammed in Tipperary. But I'm very happy here and I love it. And what I love about it is that where I live in particular, I'm very close to sort of the border with Kilkenny and the border with Waterford. So it's like a real kind of liminal place, Okay. There's lots of ancient tribes, that they delineated the counties. So it's just nice. So I like being on the edges and in the margins. I like those kind of places. Yeah. So it suits me.
And I know, I suppose, with south from where you are where the three sisters meet, where the Nord, the Suir and the Barrow actually meet near Slieve. How far is that from you?
It's a good 20 minutes, half an hour for me. Yeah.
Our American viewers will say that.
I'm kind of up near where the river is tidal up to where I live. So so the tide comes up as far as where, and then it stops. Yeah. So I'm sort of in the tidal lands of the shore. Yeah. So
do you have any idea what that does? I mean, I'm looking over the River Nore outside here, one of the three sister rivers. And it's not tidal where I am. Do you have a sense of what living near tidal water does, like a tidal river?
Yeah. Certainly. I think, like, again, it's very liminal, and it is kind of a crossing over place. You get the whole influx of the sea, that the sea comes in to reach you, so you certainly have a sense of that, but you also have a sense of stuff being washed away, but also the riches coming down from the tributaries that go into into the river and the sea, you know, from like the River Suir sort of divides Waterford and Tipperary. So the mountains on both sides, they drain into the River Suir. And yeah, there's a real sense of that. And interestingly, Carr-Gomm, like also, you know, not so much now because it's mostly pleasure craft, but it was the main kind of thoroughfare in the 1800s into, you know, it was also the main place from which we exported most of our produce during the famine, you know. So there is a sense of that as well, you know. So there's a whole sort of legacy, you know, encased in a river. But there's something about a river, I think, that takes it, that bears it. I do get a sense of that. I know because I work, you know, I'm a librarian, so I worked at one point in Carr-Gomm, which is the town nearest to me. And what I remember most are the sounds of helicopters because it was river rescue.
Oh.
Yeah, and I know that, you know, when those air ambulances fly, they usually fly to Cork or Dublin, but they always come back by the river, like the birds, I suppose. They migrate home by the river. But they just have this habit now of just keeping an eye on the river because the river has taken so many people as well. And I know like suicide is such a huge thing, you know, and the river takes people that way. And, you know, sometimes, and I remember once there were dolphins that came up. There was 2 particularly high profile suicides, you know, in close proximity to young women. It was very sad. And then, you know, a few days later, two dolphins came up the river. So yeah. And there's the whole, you know, link with Cesar, and the whole link with, you know, with the, you know, Aaron and yeah, Fiola. So you know, so there's something very, very ancient about it, you know. Yeah. And there's loads of legends about, I'm sure the same on the Nore, of mermaids coming up the river and sitting on rocks in the river and being caught in nets in the river, and yeah, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So yeah. And now there's a beautiful blue way has been developed along the old towpath. So if anybody's ever in Ireland, they definitely need to go to see the blue way along the River Suir.
Well, it's on my to-do list to go on it. I'd only heard about it during lockdown when we couldn't go beyond 2Ks, and I just haven't gotten around to doing, because I did the Barrow Way for a while, and I've just done a little Green Way, but the Blue Way, I want to really to explore that.
Yeah. And there's something really, really healing, I think, about water. I'm sure you find that where you are. You know, the ions on water, you know, and the blue of the water as well. There's just something, the stillness. I mean, there's so much water gives us, you know, I mean, it gives us life. We, you know, and we take it so much for granted, don't we? Yeah.
Indeed. And here, because we've had a lot of rain recently, I live overlooking a floodplain. It doesn't touch me. I look down. So every winter I get this little Avalon-y feel where I can't see where the river is. What I'm looking at is a lake. And then when you see the fog and the mist coming over it, it's absolutely
so ethereal. Yeah. I love when the mist comes in, because it's almost like when I was small, we used to say, "Oh, the Druids mist is coming." You know, it's like that's what we used to call it. Yeah, the Druids mist, and you know, it's something lovely, you know, about the river. And you know, I grew up in the uplands of the Commerce, so you know, it just sat really low. And it was something really ethereal about it. Yeah. And you always had this sense of mystery, and that it was bringing something with it, you know? Yeah.
As some kind of regard mist as frightening, I've always found it comforting. It's like there's something that is containing, rather, I don't fear it. I know some people do and think, you know, it heralds something awful that's going to happen. And I mean, it distorts things. I know I remember climbing Carron-Thuil years and years ago. That, for our viewers, is the highest mountain in Ireland. For us, it's big, okay? For the rest of the world, it's quite small. But I remember in the fog, and you see this, what looks like a ginormous boulder. And when you get to it, it's quite small, because fog distorts, it magnifies image or things, or the of things. I find that fascinating.
And I grew up, you know, there were all sheep farmers around, and like when the fog was on the hill, there was only certain people who knew the hill well enough to dare to go out, because I mean there's lots of corrie lakes in the Cummers and very high cliffs, and you wouldn't really, you know, they're not for the faint-hearted. You could end up falling off very easily. So only the people who knew it, you know, and there was a great sort of wisdom about them. You know, they never had been outside their own area, but they had a great wisdom about them just from nature and being out in the hill, you know, with the sheep. And
you know, I think it's lovely to know, to be so intimately connected with your landscape, recognize it and know it in any kind of weather that you are. I have that in my garden, which isn't, you know, my garden's big, but it's a small piece of the world. In order, and when people go out there, and I go out in the dark, and I never think that, oh, people need lights. I prefer to go out in the dark, but I know it. And just to be able to go up the mountains to your sheep in the mist, to have that sense of knowing your landscape so well that you feel safe in all weathers, it's just it's magical. So Tabitha says it brings this is the river. It brings magic and mystery, fog and mist, like the other world is close. And then Kieran Quick says, good day from Alberta, Canada via Kerry, Ireland. You're very welcome, Kieran. So I find the mist so beautiful and liminal, as Frank McCone says in the Mistful Path. I haven't read that, but yeah, sorry, and I cut across you there.
The Mist of Avalon is a really lovely book. I'm sure you've read that, have you? Yeah, very nice. Marion Zimmer. Can't remember who wrote it now, but Bradley, it's very, Bradley. Yeah. I know, and yeah, there's something though. I mean, there's something that really comes home to me about this time of the year as well, about embracing the dark, and about, you know, just go to it, you know, like we, you know, because I think there's some, and about, you know, the fog and the mists as well, you know, it's, you can't fear what you don't know, you know. I think if you know it, you don't have to fear it then, you know. We need to, you know, and like I know my neighbor is an organic farmer, and he is always talking about what, for when he lived, he's been in where I live now a lot longer, and when he moved there, you know, there were no lights on his vista, and now he sees it as like light pollution, you know. And there are very few places left in the world where there, you know, we can just see dark, you know. And they're like nearly, I think they're UNESCO World Heritage Sites almost, you know, which is kind of a scary prospect, isn't it? You know, and you just look at the energy consumption and all of that, you know, it's so many questions, you know. So we should, I think there's a role to play to encourage people to embrace the dark. And I think as well, there's something about our shadow side as well that we need to, you know, and I know, like, because I'm in middle age now, that maybe it's just there. I'm just more comfortable with my shadow side, you know. It's just all about celebrating it, but keeping it in check as well, you know, because shadow is what throws you into contrast, you know. You can't be all.
And shadow isn't always negative. It's what you don't see. It's, you know, that you may reveal some wonderful mystery when you take a look at shadow or explore it a little bit further. You might be surprised, not you, one might be surprised at what can be discovered. So
and it's kind of linked as well to the liminal, you know, the fringes and the margins and the edges of things. Sometimes something is a lot more interesting because of its flaws, you know. Even the most beautiful diamond, you know, has a flaw. Yeah, so, and that's what makes it really interesting, is the flaw. Yeah, so
yeah, we're not looking for perfection.
No. Though the skies may fall, no. And actually, what's lovely about imperfection is that we grow so much out of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's by our mistakes that we learn, you know. Yeah, so yeah, hopefully this current imperfection is teaching us all.
This world imperfect, this
world, whatever it is,
situation. Let's hope.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an incredible opportunity to learn. I think maybe we learn as individuals, but if we could learn globally, I think it would be a wonderful learning. Let's hope.
Yeah, let's hope. That's hope. That's what we can do. It's hope. Yeah. And I suppose bear the responsibility of the legacy that we leave, Yeah, because like I was up in Knockrow Passage Tomb with you at midwinter, and and I've only ever seen, I go there every year for years, but I've only ever seen the sunrise and the sunset at the solstice twice, at the same time, so I have this habit of going up there now a day or two before and a day or two after until I do see it, the sunrise and the sunset. Yeah. And it's, I was up there trying to get the sunset. So I went back a few days and I was really struck by, that's 6,000 years old, that tomb, and the legacy that those ancestors left for us, what will we leave them? What will we leave? What do we show? I was doing this, like last year, I took on this project to not use as much plastic. And I did a course on eco-bricking, and it is so, and it's so hard not to live with it, not to even shop without plastic. It's really hard. But it is improving. But anyway, what was my point there about? So I've done these eco bricks, which I'm now going to use to make something in my garden. And when I was up in Knockrow, I was thinking eco bricks are where your plastic container, you fill with plastic, you stuff it until it becomes as full as a brick or the weight of a brick. You just keep stuffing the plastic in, clean plastic. So because it doesn't decompose, but it'll become a building material that will stay.
It's like so what are you stuffing? It's like a plastic bottle or something?
Yeah, you have a plastic bottle and you stuff it like say cartons that you would get vegetables in or whatever. I chop them up really small and put them into the bottle until the bottle is full of those. Yeah. And then it becomes really rigid and solid and it's weighty. And then you can turn them on their side and then, with clay, make a structure, and then it stays in my garden. So that's probably going to be my legacy, which is really weird, for in 6,000 years' time, some archaeologist will be discovering this and wondering if humanity is still here in 6,000, there must be another way. But anyway, that's seemingly the best thinking on how to, because most plastic, even recycled plastic, ends up in landfill anyway after.
So the idea is that, because when in where is it? In Tanzania, I've seen it where, and also Hutu, where either using paint cans, using those as bricks to make houses.
Oh yeah.
Or marking out pathways with plastic bottles. I like the idea of that'll perish at some point, but the fact that you're saying it's solid, and let's hope it doesn't leach. But that something solid that. Okay, Stephanie says, there's a hut in California somewhere made completely out of plastic, just like the way you describe everything inside and outside. A lot of work, but I see the idea behind it. And Gillian says she's going to try that. Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting when you think about, it's not going to go anywhere. So then let's use it to some good. I mean, I just saw something today about plastic phone covers. and that each time you upgrade, it's a different size. So, like, what do you do with your plastic phone covers? They're talking about now plant-based phone covers that last longer or decompose quicker. But I think the idea of making something that actually can be used, I think it is a wonderful thing. So it'd be interesting to see how anyone, if any of our audience, Gillian, how you get on with that one. So how many bricks have you?
It's not too many. This is the amazing thing, because you can actually fit a lot of plastic into one bottle if you make it small enough. I think I have about 20 in a year, Yeah, different shapes and sizes. Yeah, so wow. Yeah, so maybe one a month. So I do. Well, actually, I do 2 bottles at a time. So one is for the cartony, the harder plastics, and then like you're wrapped in bread or something.
Your clings or the light
plastic film that goes into another one. Yeah, so they do 2 different types, at any one time. So I'll usually. It wouldn't even. Well, I'm much more conscious of what I buy now as well. I mean, that's the real solution: is just not buy it in the first place, And if you just make a song and dance about it when you're buying it, then supermarkets do begin to listen.
That's true. So, are you asking your friends for all their plastic?
No, I'm not. Nice try.
Lisa says, "Can you show us what you don't have any? You're not at home, are you? You can't show. Well, somebody'd love to see one of your bottles.
I know. I'll send you a picture, maybe. Yeah.
And actually post it onto the link.
Okay.
Onto the Facebook link, because this is on Facebook as well. That would be lovely.
There is a whole link. There is a whole link where you can do a course online as well. There's a whole sort of philosophy around eco-bricking. And I think there's a school in Wexford that's building something out of eco-bricks as well. So maybe there is, in the UK, there are much more fringe places where people are doing kind of, where they're doing gardening together as well. And they make sheds out of these bricks, or compostable toilets, or, yeah. So it's all, it just helps you to make a structure. So you're not building with concrete either, But I'll send the link to eco-bricks. So there's a whole website on eco-bricking. Yeah.
Yeah. Lisa says plastic used to be all made from cellulose. I still have a sewing box from this. 80 or so years old, brittle but still there. Yeah, I mean, cellulose is plant, and that was I'm first learning about plastic and cellulose, and then it seemed to disappear. Yeah. And then you go to the odd tourist shop in Scotland, I think maybe on Mull, or was it Kilmartin. And I bought these pens in a gift shop, and they were made of parsnips. Wow. And there's also now, I think it's a few companies, instead of the styrofoam packaging for things, they now have, it looks like it, but it's actually made from potato skins.
Wow. Yeah.
It becomes very saponaceous. It just dissolves. And I think that's brilliant to be able to use things like that. That would be composted anyway, instead of.
Hopefully we're moving
plastic. It's about to use what we have, because there's still so much. Even if it's taken out of the seas, where does it go?
I know.
Go into another plastic bottle to create a structure. I think that would be wonderful.
Yeah. And I was looking at something the young scientists did as well there this year. There was something online about that they're now finding a way to recycle all the masks that we're using and throwing away. Yeah. So that's a very brave one, for people to take on, given that, they might be infected.
It's like I was looking at I was in town today. I went to the market and looking on the street, just discarded. And it's not that somebody would necessarily have thrown them; they'll have slipped out of their pocket, or a car park, just as maybe people keep them in the door or whatever. They look horrendous, and it's like I tried to burn one to see. Well, is it paper? And most of it's plastic.
So. Yeah. They do wash, if that's any help, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing by doing it, but they do wash. But anyway. Oh, don't even start me on that now, because I'll just depress the nation. Our nations.
Jane says there are
better days are coming.
Sorry?
Better days are coming.
Let's hope. So Zane says there's some new cellulose wood and grass fiber forks, knives, and spoons that biodegrade in 100 days. Yeah. And then there are what you call bags, compostable bags. I know the first time, I can't remember many years ago, this was at the gatherings in Glastonbury, having compostable, well, obviously paper cups as opposed to the styrofoam, and then the compostable, what looked like plastic glasses. And I remember very, very funny when Dave says, "Don't worry, they're not going to compost as you're drinking them. That they'll take a while." But that has just been wonderful to be able to do. And then Hannah says the lateral flow test packs are full of plastic too. It's horrendous. Yep. Well, it goes into my head. They'll take everything plastic. Tara, it's Mawie Barrett from Tipperary, Ireland. I'm interviewing. Just somebody is asking who you are. Somebody's just come in late. So,
but I suppose, I mean, the other side of it is, like, my daughter was in hospital there. She was very ill earlier on in the year, and she was hooked up to all sorts of things that were plastic, and you sort of think about irony and how, I spent a year, making plastic my enemy, and then here was plastic, which, single-use plastic, which was, these drips and lines and things going into my daughter that were saving her life, so we have to sort of always remember that sort of bit like the shadow side of things. You always have to remember there is good in everything, so you can't demonize, you have to take the good, but be very responsible. And I think COVID, I think, has taught us this really, because we've had to be innovative about meeting people, and we've taken our lives outdoors more, and we take our picnics with us. So we're reusing things, whereas heretofore we had just become such a disposable society, Yeah, but that's, hopefully COVID has given us that gift of not being as disposable,
And also the thing about sitting out, that here, because we had such strong lockdowns, and how pubs and bars and restaurants and coffee shops were closed, unlike some other parts of the world. And then when they allowed outdoor, you couldn't be indoor. That premises have become really creative. I was in a place in Carlow, and it was it had been an alleyway that delivery trucks used to come in. Now it's an indoor-outdoor space, with the roof. I mean, it's still cold, but they put heaters in. The people have become really, really creative. And then you're eating out. I mean, I had coffee twice outside, in comfortable seats that before it wouldn't have been there, that somehow, and that this is the month of January, I would never have considered, unless it was in the war. That it's just lovely to think, oh yeah, and you just wear a coat, or they supply a blanket and you can wrap up and you can have your tea or your coffee or your lunch or whatever it is. And that's thinking more about being outside, which is lovely.
Yeah, so there are gifts of COVID as well. Yeah, so it's good to remember. Yeah, good to be reminded. Few and far between, but there are gifts.
Exactly. So I don't know how long you're in the order, or what brought you to Druidry, or if you're practicing before you draw before you the order.
I think, I mean, I feel I have always been a Druid, if that makes any sense. You were talking earlier about being familiar with our landscape. And in Ireland, we are incredibly lucky, those of us that notice, the landscape that we live in, because our history is marked on the landscape. We have archaeology that goes back to the Ice Age, and most of our sites are unexcavated. So there's a rich tapestry of, on our landscape, and our history is there. And I think for me, the landscape that I grew up in, it sort of seeped into me like osmosis. Now, I grew up in a place called the Nair Valley, which is a river place deep in the Cummers, you know. Before the famine, there was a road that went into it, but there was no road that came out of it. Do you know what I mean? And it was it was a mountain place and a river, but a real Bronze Age landscape, because, you know, there's a stone circle up there. There's a whole load of megalithic monuments up there. And so it's been settled for a long time. So it's a real sort of, I suppose, safe haven in the mountains, you know. And there are these little cluster villages, clochen villages, you know, in each townsland. And the Irish townslands, you know, they have an anglicised Irish name. And in the Nair where I grew up, there were, all of the townslands had a Druid association. There was a family of Druids. You know, there was 3 brothers and a sister, and all of the townslands are named after them. So there's one townsland called Kilkenny, which is a Druid called Cian, and he had a diadem, you know, he had a golden diadem. And there was another townsland called Shanbally-Ann, which was the old town of Anne. And that Anya, you know, which is the goddess of the sun goddess, she was supposed to have had a court of poetry, you know. And there was another townsland called Knock on Brandon, which is Brendan, who was another brother. And there was another place named after a guy called Bennett. Now, the house I grew up in, so I was never going to be anything other than a Druid, I think, you know. The house that I grew up in, when I was born in the UK, and my parents went to, they were the 10-pound poms. I don't know if you've ever heard of 10-pound poms. Yeah. So I was taken off to Tasmania when I was 2. So I lived there for 5 years, because the deal with the 10-pound pom deal was that you had to stay there for 5 years. So I lived there till I was 7, and then I came back to the Nair Valley, you know, this like, I lived, well, we had moved from Tasmania to Sydney, and like, you know, bright lights, big city, you know, cosmopolitan, you know, swimming pool in the back garden, to my grandmother's house, which didn't even have electricity, I think, at the time. You had to go to the well for water. It was, you know, and we were building our own house, and, you know, we became a bit more modernized. But that kind of influence as a child, and all of the neighbors coming in, you know, rambling in, and just telling stories around the fire. And the stories were always about deities or druids, or, you know, the she or the banshee, or who, you know, it's just this fascinating, rich stuff, you know. And I was just always felt drawn to that. So I was hugely, because we had, in the land that we owned, there was a standing stone, a place called Knockanaffrin, which is, And I remember when I was 17 reading Thomas Hardy's Tess of the D'Urbervilles, and, you know, being fascinated with Stonehenge, and but like that standing stone in a place called Carr-Gomm, which means little rock, you know, is my Stonehenge. You know what I mean? It was my, you know. So I just always felt drawn to those kind of places, and I would look at the landscape in terms of it being a cluster of archaeology. You know, that one site is linked to another site. There's always some sort of astrological alignment, or a sun, or, you know, there's a reason for it being there, because they're 6,000 years old, and there's a reason for them being there. So that mystery really called me. So I just started practicing, you know, in a hedgy kind of way, you know, and I would, you know, I just love going off to my secret places, doing ritual by myself. Yeah. And I get so much out of that. And I find, you know, even if I'm troubled or something, to tell the trees is very therapeutic. Yeah. I just find that it really helps. And, you know, it's weird because I can say this to you, you know, and I know you'll get it, but for years, like I wouldn't have said that out loud to anybody because I, you know, for fear of the men in white coats. And this is the lovely thing about middle age, you know, you just start to grow into yourself and you know, you don't care. Yeah.
Yes.
So that was it. And I so I was always at that and I was drawn to it. And I used to, you know, I knew about Kilkenny Druid Grove and I used to I always look it up online for years. And I said, I must, you know, I want to go to one of their moon ceremonies. And I used to, you know, just want to do that. And I just got brave and did it one day then, you know. And I got a great welcome. And yeah, it just felt like a home for me. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of it, my story. Yeah. So and anytime I travel, I just travel around ancient sites. You know, I feel drawn to ancient sites. Yeah. So all of my traveling is, you know, is like I go to Brittany a lot. You know, I've been to Callanish, you know, the Isle of Lewis, really nice. Yeah. So yeah, so I'm down in Wexford now, and I know I'll be stalking out the archaeology. Yeah. And I'll be bringing my crane bag and doing things.
Lovely. Just about you visiting sacred sites, just it was posted on the Kilkenny Druid Grove Facebook page about somebody had asked the question article about do you have a mystical experience at a sacred site? And is there any site that you have felt something otherworldly or something mystical or some kind of insight that was specific to that was specific to the place that you're in, some sacred site? Or have you felt that?
Well, I certainly I felt a lot of things, many experiences actually. Some sites, like if I ever visit a site, I will always ask the site's permission to go in, and some sites don't give me permission.
Yep.
I feel that really strongly. And one place, now it's not a sacred site actually, but yeah, I'll come back to that story. But so, and they're usually, what I find, they're usually circle enclosures that I'm sometimes not allowed into. Other sites, I know, like I have a lot of friends who are archaeologists and stuff, and there's a load of, near me in a field, there's souterrains, you know, they're underground. Yeah. And when I grew up, we grew up with this huge respect for, you know, the whole thing about the 2 a day and them going underground and leaving them to the underground, not infiltrating their sites, you know. So I've been invited into souterrains, but I tend not to go because I see them as too sacred, you know, as their places and not to be disturbed. But one time I was in a site in, where was it? I'm trying to think now. I think it was somewhere in Brittany. It was somewhere down Morbahan, a bit over from Carnac, over along there. And it was a passage tomb, but there were several chambers. You know, it wasn't, you know, like a bit, not unlike Newgrange now, not as big.
Gavrini? Not Gavrini, no.
No,
Gavrini?
not Gavrini. Yeah, it was, and again, it was one that I came across by accident. I hadn't intended to go there. It was on the outskirts of a medieval town, and I just got out of the camper van and sort of walked around, and I was called in, and definitely something tried to manifest in front of me. And I took photos, and I often get orbs in photos that I take at ancient sites, but this one was definitely like a white misty something. Yeah. Now it felt very welcoming, and I felt a huge peace there. You know, it didn't feel sinister. And when I do go to a site that feels sinister, I go away. I don't, you know, but there's very few actually that I have felt are sinister. But some places just need to be left alone, you know. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. I like my mum. My mum is from Sligo, and Sligo is a really rich
Magic.
landscape.
Yes.
Yeah, it's. I mean, and on her farm where they grew up, there was it was called Carr-Gomm, and there's a mound up in the field, and there's a like what looks like an. I mean, now I would know it as kind of an entrance chamber, but there was a stone in front of it that had footmarks, footprints, and it was meant to be Balor's footprint or something,
Okay.
Balor, the giant. But and again, we were always had to treat those places with complete reverence, You just wouldn't be messing with them now in any way, So even playing on them was kind of discouraged, You could come a cropper. And there was another time, my aunt, I had an aunt and a grandaunt who were Loretto nuns. And one of them, she was definitely a mystic, my aunt. She has left behind her a lot of writing. So I would say nowadays she would be seen as a mystic, But she, when she died, I think I heard the banshee. Yeah. And I have never heard the banshee before or since. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's interesting you're talking about these sacred sites. For me, Pat Booker says, have you folks gone down into Ovnagat, which is the cave of the cats
Yeah.
in Tulsk? And I've done it a few times.
Have you?
Where I get my experiences are in caves or in West Kennet Barrow, where there was a group of people doing a meditation, connecting to the ancestors, and they were drumming. And there is a little window at the top, but they'd covered it. So we were invited in to join if we did. And it was pure bliss. One passage tomb near Gavrini, it was just incredible. Once it was the passage tomb was curved, leading into a central chamber. So once you moved a little bit there was no light at all. And again, just being in the mother in that womb was incredible. And I've had anytime I've gone into Ovnagat, the cat of the caves, the cave of the cats. I think, Pat, you would get in there. It's you need to go there. It's not that tiny, but the cave is that it's normally you see a cave and you go through it. This is a tiny thing, and you go down. You don't walk into it; you go down, and it's very dark. And bring a head torch. There are no head. Well, at the time we couldn't buy a head torch in Tulsk, in the village where it is. So I had to just go in and go down. There's steps down. There's cut steps down deep into the cave. But there's something magical about that. For me, it's not being out in the open air. It's going into the earth somehow. That's what I get my experiences.
Yeah, Onigat, I've been there, and I haven't gone into the cave, and it was one of the sites that wouldn't allow me in.
Okay.
Yeah, and people often ask me, would I go? And I just feel forbidden to go into that cave. Yeah. Now I also it's interesting. I have had this very powerful Morrigan experience. Not so much there, more over around Loch Arrow, which is beneath the Moitura. Yeah, but yeah, there's interesting energy in Sligo, but yeah, so I don't see myself ever going into Onigat. But and like that, I said, one of the things I brushed over there, my first summer job was in the Mitchelstown Caves. So I was a guide in the Mitchelstown Caves. So I loved it, and I just loved looking for faces and patterns and things in the stalactites and mites. But then I took it on myself too, and like that, down in France, I've been to a lot of caves in France as well, and to the oldest, with the cave paintings. But I took it upon myself to go and visit all of the caves in Ireland. And I went to the ones in the Marble Arch ones. I think
Oh
they're
yes,
called
up in
something like
Fermanagh.
that.
Lovely.
Yeah. But in Dunmore in Kilkenny,
Yeah, it's lovely.
they
Jarkarna.
wouldn't let me in. I wasn't allowed. Like I went in, but I came out in Luban. Yeah, Luban. What's that? What's that word mean? That's an Irish word. In a heap. Yeah, just the vibes in there. I just found them so. And I haven't gone into caves since. I think actually since that experience, I just felt compelled to leave. Something banished me there, and sometimes when I go to visit a site, I don't research the history. I do that afterwards. I go and get a sense of it before I research it. And I think there were Viking women massacred in Dunmore, were there?
There's a very sad story about women and children burnt. Obviously, they died of smoke poisoning.
Okay.
Horrendous story. But there's a triad. One of the triads, the three darkest places in Ireland: Newgrange, Knowth, Jarkarna, and Jarkarna is the cave of the alders. That's
Dunmore. Wow.
And I've been fascinated there. So, and each time I go in, I learn something more. But it is a very.
I've even gotten the heebie-jeebies now talking about it. It's really, but it is that real sense of suffocate. Like I literally had to get out of there. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's quite deep because you're going in. I see somebody, David, would like to go to visit Merlin's Cave, and that's quite shallow. And it's in, I take it you're talking about the one in Tintagel. And it's just beautiful to go in there because when the tide is out, you can go in and then you have a beautiful vista of the sea. It's just absolutely exquisite. And then Tabitha said she was pretty sure that Newgrange didn't want her there.
Wow.
Okay. She says that every time we got out of the bus to visit one of the sites, the wind picked up and hail would pelt us and then dissipate when we left. Okay. I think there's a message. But I don't think it's about an affinity or a compatibility at that time. It may be, Tabitha, that another time you go to Newgrange, it would be exactly the right time. Or to go to Garna or Ovnagoth. But this is fascinating. And you see, I think it's really, really important to listen to that and listen to the welcome or this isn't the right time for you, just to pay attention because you're honoring yourself as well as the place. Like you don't include in other people, you always check and you pick up a message. Is this the time to talk to somebody or not? And it's.
Yeah, I certainly would agree with that. And I think as women, we need to learn to trust our guts. Yeah, I mean, I think that is a skill that we need to hone so much. And if you get an inkling not to go into a place, don't go into the place. Yeah. Get an inkling. Yeah, because we have for centuries done what we should and what we must and what we ought to do. And we really ought to do what we want to do and not what we should do, must do, or ought to do. Yeah.
Maybe that comes with age. Pat says that always looks fascinating. I think you're talking about Uvnagot, but I'd be nervous getting stuck or lost down there. It's interesting. Too many scary Doctor Who episodes when I was a kid. It was interesting when you said that the Nair Valley, that there's a road in, but there isn't a road out. Somebody said, "Oh my God, you can." And I was thinking Hotel California, you can check out, but you can never leave. And then when Pat was talking about this, it's a bit like the Nair Valley. But I remember going into a cave in Tanzania. I was having an initiation with traditional healers, and I was much bigger than I am now, and they sent a chicken in first to check with the spirits, was I allowed in? The chicken comes out, which actually said, yes, I could go in. So this very, very thin woman went in ahead of me, a healer, and we had to crawl in like snakes. So she's in there moving easily. I can feel the cave. And I remember it was very, very narrow. And there was this ginormous boulder ahead of me. And I thought, oh my God. This could fall on me. And then I thought, okay, if it does, it does. And I just surrendered.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, I'm going to crawl in here, and then some big cavern is going to open up. But it didn't. We just kept going. And then she turned around, and I turned around. So we moved in like two snakes. And it was fascinating.
Yeah.
But I remember, and then somebody was taking photographs of me coming out, and it was like giving birth. First my head, like the crown, then my head came out, then my shoulders, and it was like a rebirth. Just absolutely wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there is that interpretation, isn't there, of coming out of the cave, of being reborn. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Sometimes, yeah. I have this huge thing about the 2 a day going underground, and that this pact that we made with them, and that we need to honor that. And there's something in that for me around going into certain sites. Yeah. It's all like the best way that I can describe it. Yeah. And others are fine. It very much depends. Yeah. The energies, the ancient deities there, or whatever is there. There's certainly an ancient wisdom, that's there. Yeah. Yeah.
Gillian is talking about Plato's Cave. We talked about Plato's Cave with my guest last week, Aman Quatra. It's just interesting you mentioned it again. And then Pat says, I always meant to try one of those sensory deprivation flotation tanks where it's perfectly dark and you're just floating as if in the womb. I've never done it, but I know from people who've done it that they're just absolutely an amazing experience. I've sometimes in meditation, when I'm in bed, I have to be lying down, where I've actually lost all sense of, I'm just aware of my thoughts or a sense of someplace, but I don't feel my body anymore. And beautiful feeling that I'm floating, but I can't feel anything other than all I'm aware of is my awareness, if that makes sense. And it's a lovely feeling.
I used to, and sometimes do still, though not a lot less, but I used to, as a child, look down on myself. I used to sort of be able to look down on myself. Yeah. Not like, I floated above myself and looked down on myself. It wasn't that I looked down on myself.
No, I understood what you meant. I've never had that experience, but just that I'm here, but I've lost my body. So it's, I have never gone up and looked down. Yeah.
And I know I was never drawn to rebirthing, actually. I know it was a great rage a few years ago, rebirthing as a way to, yeah. But I was a premature baby, so I think I just wanted out. Maybe there's some association with caves and the womb for me. Maybe I just needed out. Yeah,
that's interesting. I was 48 hours coming. I'm very fast, but I was slow coming into the world. But so were my own two children. I was 48 hours contracted before they arrived. It's really, really interesting.
And when you did that initiation in Tanzania, was it Eimear? Was this when you were a midwife?
I'm not a midwife.
Sorry.
No. This was as a psychologist. Well, and as a druid. So, I mean, how many years ago was that? Might have been about 10 years ago.
Okay.
Howard and I are we have a very close friend, Shaban Kalula. Actually, really, really, he was here when I did my first Druidic ceremony in 2003. He said, and so he's been a very supportive friend in my finding my spirituality, nature-based spirituality in these lands, because I've been working with him. Howard and I have been working with him for years. But he's an African healer, and he worked here 3 summers. He came and saw people. But I wanted something for my own landscape. That was one of the frustrations I had. And he was very, very supportive of me. So Pat says, I was a cesarean. I always leave rooms via the skylight. And somebody mentioned not liking turtlenecks. My daughter never did, and the cord was around her neck. And I often wonder.
Yeah.
And
do you ever hear that thing in Ireland about the call over a baby?
Oh yes,
yeah.
you'll never die of you'll never die from drowning, and it's always seen when the sack is over you. This wonderful, lucky thing to have experienced.
Such a lucky thing, and it comes from the call, like the Kailach,
That's right.
the hood.
The hood.
And I know that someone in our family, it was kept in the attic. The call that was over the baby. It was kept. Yeah. Now I know there's like my grandmother used to eat the afterbirth. That doesn't happen so much anymore. But the call was kept. It was kept as a talisman. It was you didn't sort of. I think it was supposed to go down with the person when they were buried. Maybe, there was that kind of thing.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
Interesting, because I know. When my son was meant to be a home birth, and I ended up having a cesarean section. And my daughter was born here, and I didn't eat the placenta, but we had conversations about it. And I remember teasing friends that, I'd been making placenta, either burgers or pate. And but we planted a yew tree for the day after she was born and buried a placenta, and it's a flourishing tree. Owen the Bardoon says, I was born on the way to the hospital, always in a rush to get places. With the call, you were born with the call. Mine was burnt, as is our tradition. That's from a traveller tradition. And the pops on the fire were counted, each for an expected year.
The pops on the fire, like the cracking, is it?
And for an expected year, what does that mean, Owen? That's really, really interesting. So type it in if you can. I think. And then Helen says, well, I was a late baby, and one of my favourite experiences as a child was potholing. Wow.
Yeah.
Lisa, you told me what's that? That's the call. It's when the the amniotic sac, that for some when the waters break, it opens and then the waters come out and the baby is free of it. But some babies are born still in it, and it's considered. Hannah says her daughter was born with the call still covering her. It's considered good luck. And that in Irish tradition, you won't die of drowning.
It's interesting about the turtleneck as well. The whole thing of like your body will never lie for you. That you'll have a body memory of something. Yeah, that sort of rings true. Yeah, if the cord is around your neck.
Tara says, our daughter's placenta was buried under an apple tree. I would tell my friends I was eating the fruit of my loins. I'll freak people out.
Very good. We have a hole in the garden to bury someone under the apple tree, but there's a joke. It's a joke.
That's wonderful.
Buried him under the apple tree.
Yes. The shamans or the lunatics' resting place is the apple tree. So, when we were talking about when you're talking about Knockrow and how old it is, and responsibility. Before I say that, John King. Now this is fascinating. I've got the amniotic sac from my grandson's birth. I carried in my buoyancy aid. Well done. And then they were referred to, this is Salve says, as mermaid births. Beautiful. These wonderful associations, just fascinating. And John's wife, Lynn, was a guest a few weeks back, and she's a midwife. So, and then Pat says, round my way, there was a woman who told me about mixing menstrual blood into the room plaster so she could stay in her house, a protection against the landlord evicting her. Body magic comes in. Now, did it work, Pat? That's the question.
That's interesting. Yeah, I like that one.
I know.
That's fascinating.
As protection, I've used that myself, but not into the plaster, so she wouldn't be evicted. Fascinating. Let us know if she kept theirs. Then Owen comes. He's explaining the pops, crackling made and the burning of it. People would count it as an indication towards life length. Each pop is a season for a year, depending on family. It's a wonderful tradition. Let's hope there were lots and lots of pops for you. So
that wisdom, that's all gone. You know, there's so much wisdom in the traveler culture. It's all going because we're not doing those things anymore. You know, my mother used to always say that, like, I grew up, we had no TV growing up in the Nair, and it was always telling stories, and that, you know, that electricity got rid of the banshee.
That's
you know?
right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting, but yeah, gosh.
So Pat says she was an old lady in the house when she told me. And then John says, that's how I got the sack. She's concerned for my safety when I'm on the water. That's his wife, Lynn.
I heard something about menstrual blood and witchcraft as well lately. I'm just trying to remember what it was. This as a protection anyway. But that is very old in Ireland, that, you know, that I think that's where the goddess tradition comes from. That women bled once a month and they didn't die, whereas the warriors went out in battle and they bled, they died. So it made us, our menstrual blood made us more powerful.
Absolutely, and I've heard that if you put menstrual blood on weapons, that they won't work. Or put it on the border of your land and it's there for protection. I've done that. I just think, or offered it to the land for fertility, not in my own fertility, but the fertility of my land, but also on boundaries, on the gates and things like that.
Very good.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So Diana says, would I be welcome back to this motherland to continue my learning journey as a druid? If I was born across the pond, I was born early, wanted to get out even earlier. That's 2 points. Yes, of course you're welcome. Isalinda says, I use my menstruation blood. Oh, she said it's moonstruation. I love it. To water my plants, to make offerings to the mother. Absolutely. And I used to water plants with it. Yeah, I've found it's absolutely fascinating. Oh, salve. They often used consecration of mare's menstrual blood or use in the plaster of old barns.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking of. Yes, that's what I'm thinking of. And cow's blood as well in plaster.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Even though it's probably a higher valued commodity, cow's blood, all right. But yeah. And also a horse's head under the fireplace. Did you ever hear that one?
No.
You'd love this. A horse's head or an ass's head under the flag, you know, the big old open fires. It was there, and it made the floor an echo in the floor, but it made it for dancing. You know,
putting the horse's head.
It's not like the mafia, but like, you know,
No.
A skull of a horse's head or an ass's head underneath the fire.
Okay.
And so the fire, you know, underneath where the fire pit was,
underneath the heart.
Okay. Yeah, and that this would have been cemented over. Yeah. So if you danced on the floor, you know, or danced on the flag, they used to say that there was an echo, you know, that you music with your feet because of the hollowness from the skull beneath the fire. Yeah, there is something in that. Now I must ask Michael Fortune that one, what the folklore of that is. Yeah, I forget.
Actually,
my grandmother's house
on the Bordoon, horse skull dancing floors. He's actually put it in there in the there.
There is that. Yeah.
I haven't come across this.
The dancer in you, Eimear, you would love that one, I think.
I think so. Yeah. I'm telling you, loads of responses here. I have to read them. The land that has given its food to us and has tasted our blood is more than land or kin in a very, very real way. It's a bond. We've shared at the tables of our togetherness and carried the life flow of each other. That's beautiful, Owen. There was someone says, in Southern America, there is a tradition in the African decency of using menstrual blood in bewitching. My friend's mother said she caught her husband by mixing her blood in with spaghetti. Oh, you mean she found her or caught him doing something wrong or actually managed to meet a man? I don't know. That's a really interesting one. Mm-hmm. And then Pat says, could there be some hormonal property for those fertility associations of menstrual blood? After all, it's meant to be good for pear trees if pregnant women pee on them. Oh, seriously, old country stuff here. And particularly pear trees, that's interesting. Okay.
We used to put things on apple trees, but not so much. Well, we didn't have pear trees were very exotic in the Eimear, but apple trees, we used to pour cider on the apple trees.
Okay. Yeah, I have apple trees. I have one pear tree that never does much. Every few years, I might get 3 pears. Somehow, again, you're talking about the welcome you get from certain places. Like pear trees don't do well. I've plum trees and they don't fruit.
Yeah.
Salve says, working in heritage restoration with much experience in lime plaster, there are often sorry, plaster again. There are often amazing finds when studying old lime mortars. Okay. So just fascinating. So anyway, I wanted to get back to when we talked about, the uses that, because we'll say any of these sacred sites, and Mauritia Sulawan, the archaeologist who excavated Knock Row, which for our viewers is similar to, I've mentioned this a few times, to Newgrange, but it's different in that there are 2 passage tombs aligned to the winter solstice, one at the sunrise and one at the sunset. They're not covered over. They didn't repair them after the excavation. They left them. I think they just stabilized them, but didn't cover them. But he talks about, okay, so there were, is it 3000 BC? So 5,000, 6,000 years ago. But they were used at different times by different peoples, and they may have had different purposes. And they found some pottery there. And you were saying, well, what will we do? But I think even the fact that we're having a conversation like this, that we are visiting these places again, honoring them, remembering them. And I know when I've been in old buildings, or actually that passage tomb in Carrickeel, I remember drumming there and hearing a resonance coming back, chanting in one of our temples here, because it's originally an old chapel. We were chanting one night. It doesn't always happen, but hearing singing coming back, and it wasn't an echo. That being in places like that and bringing your awe and bringing your reverence and bringing your celebration and bringing your curiosity and your sense of mystery, I think is a huge honoring of the land as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there is, like if you just take Knock Row, for example, as an example, like Knock Row, the local people always knew Knock Row was there, but nobody knew exactly what it was. It's only since Mauritia Sulawan did the excavation that they discovered these passages and the alignment and all of that. And it used to be, there was a road that went through it. It had been dissected even by agriculture. And there's a whole sort of mining landscape near there as well. And had it not been for that reverence, and there is this great thing in Ireland that you'd have more luck if you damaged a site or harmed an ancient site. You had to mind them. Had it not been for that reverence, much more of our archaeology would be decimated. And what's really lovely now is that I am standing up there this year, thinking about the legacy that I will leave after me, and thanking my ancestors for the legacy that they left, that I'm able to really get something out of a site like that, where I'm able to leave down the shite of the last year, watch the sunset, watch this, the sunrise on a new sort of calendar, and let things down as the sun sets, and just take the wisdom of the year, but let down things too, let them and leave them there to the site, because the site can take it. That site can play the role, and we have a mindset sometimes. I think when we look, you have to be very careful of the lens through which we view things. We have this mindset that it's, I call it Gestapo thinking. I don't know how I come up with that, but it's like purists, like things evolve over centuries, and sites evolve over centuries and have multiple use and different uses, and it's evolved in the same way. I get something out of Knockrow because of the evolution of where I am in my time. You know, it may well be something that the ancestors who built it got, or maybe they didn't. But what's common to it is that we are recognizing there's a commonality through the ages. We're recognizing something in the specialness, something in the sacredness. And it's the reverence, and we need to bring reverence. Reverence is important, you know. And, you know, reverence is a word that's associated almost with religion, but it, you know, so it can get, you can throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, reverence is such an important thing to do. You have to, you know, you have to ultimately be very, very respectful of lots of things, you know, like of our water, of our earth, of our air, of, you know, of the things around us. Because when you look at climate change, I was even thinking earlier on about, you were saying about the prophecies of Columkill, you know, about how Ireland will be drowned, you know, in water, and, you know, and, you know, of course it will if the ice caps melt, you know, there'll only be like so much for high Brazil. You know, you know, you know, reverence is important, and we have to bring reverence along with us. So I think that's what's lovely as well about Druidry, is you have that sort of practice of reverence, you have the ritual of reverence, and that's a lovely thing. It's a lovely thing to bring along with you, you know. Yeah.
Tara has a question. Is there a specific offering you bring?
Depending. I mean, if I'm going into something associated with the she, you know, I bring bread, and I bring iron, and I bring whiskey, and I bring all sorts of things. Yeah, I would bring everything I could throw at it.
You bring iron to protect you rather than give them an offering of iron, because they won't take it.
Yeah, but I would leave an offering. Oh heavens, yes, you'd have to leave an offering. So usually, alcohol, I would offer. Sometimes chocolate. Yeah. Something organic. But I tend to try and not leave a trace, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that whole thing about the Fianna. They could walk through the wood without cracking a twig.
Beautiful.
You know? So it's that whole leaving no trace thing, you know.
I know if I'm enter a place that I wasn't prepared for, I'll sing.
Oh yeah.
Or I'll offer some of my hair, because that's something from my breath.
Oh,
you know.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting about the menstrual blood there, because when you were talking, I was laughing to myself. I was kind of going, I remember when I was growing up, and if, you know, like ads for sanitary towels and stuff were not on TV, and then it suddenly became normalized. And now, you know, I'm like, what would you do if an ad came when you die? And you know, I grew up in the 80s, and now, I mean, it's wonderful we're here talking about uses for menstrual blood, isn't it wonderful? That's evolution. It's lovely.
It certainly is. I thought you were going to talk about that ad for the one with the wings, and says, "And outdo Mother Nature," and it always jarred with me.
Yeah.
But it is lovely to be able to talk about it, and to have had so many, you know, so many people commented on it. Yes, it's great, because I remember reading. Was it The Women's Room or The Female Eunuch when I was 19? There were two books that really opened me up. But there was around a discussion around the shame of menstrual blood and leaking. And I found that there's actually somebody else that happens to, because I thought I was the only one. Not the only one who menstruated, but the only one for whom it might be messy. And to talk about that and honouring it, that was such reassurance and such a welcome. And it wasn't regarding it, calling it the curse or whatever, some negative, but actually something to be honoured.
Yeah, and something to be celebrated. And it's really interesting now, because as well, you know, that kind, you know, it's like Eve, original sin, all of that. It's like the collective shame of women, you know, that is still there. I mean, I see it in the workplace, you know, and not particularly in my workplace now, but I see it, you know, it's sort of it's layered, but, you know, women of childbearing years sort of being seen as, you know, something that you need to carry in an organization, you know, because they're going to go out on maternity leave and go
yeah, a burden,
you know, all of this. So there's still so much of that there in our collective shame, you know, and it would be wonderful if we could find a way to celebrate, you know, all of our femaleness, you know. And it's lovely to have those kind of discussions, you know. I mean, you know, but, you know, it's just speaking publicly about menstrual blood. It's not like something you talk about over coffee, is it? You know, it's and it's a normal, natural thing, you know. But you don't know, you don't do that, you know. And then there's the whole sanitization of, you know, of that, and the whole industry around it, and, you know, the whole thing of how our fertility is so controlled by pharmacy, you know, and to serve commerce, not so much to serve womanhood, but to serve commerce primarily. You know, it's great that we have those choices. Our mothers didn't have them, you know. My mother had to go to yoga.
But what's really interesting around the pill, for example, or that notion in modern times that we can control our fertility, you may be able to prevent it. But I had a friend who, and she really taught me this. She had 2 children, and she was in college with me, and she was pregnant again. And there'd been a big gap, and she was delighted, absolutely delighted. But then she was having bleeding, and I remember she was visualizing, and we were all visualizing for her, holding on to this baby. And anyway, she lost the baby, and she was devastated. And I remember her saying, I always thought I could control my fertility because I did. So long, could be on the pill, etc. And it gives you loads of freedom. And then she says, now that I wanted this child, I couldn't. And there was something around that flip about
it's one of the myths, I think, that are served to us, you know. It's one of the myths that are served to us. Yeah.
And someone said, I love that eco-friendly menstrual products are going mainstream, moon cups and cotton pads. Well, it's interesting. I first came across a moon cup. It was called, I love this, a menstrual chalice. And that was on the OBOD website. I was Googling, I must have been 2003 when I started. And I came across this. I've never found it since. And then I never heard it called a menstrual chalice after that. Anyway, I got one. And now they're moon cups. And I thought that was just... I
think that would be a great name for a poetry collection, actually.
The menstrual chalice.
Yeah, I like it.
Absolutely. So, and Lisa says, still have some resentment about the commodification of women's power. Yeah. So, anyway, so it was just these wonderful.
Yeah.
Pat Booker, you're a brat. Let's mark it one and call it the Holy Grail. The HOLEY. Okay. Oh, okay. And then Linda says, I take part in a worldwide meditation of over 200,000 women on 5 full moons of each year. Full moon of February, May, August, October, December. You can have a look at the websites. Yes, the wombblessing.com. The next one is February 16th. Yes, I did that for a while. And you can have your male partner with you. And I remember Howard doing it with me and having he had to tie a thread around his wrist. And he had that for years. And I was saying, you know, when you die, do you want to be buried with your rings? He says, no, but I still want this thread to support me in this womb blessing thing. I thought it was just lovely. I had forgotten about that, Linda. So yeah. So yeah. So it's anyway, she's put the website up there on in the chat. It's wonderful. So did you answer my question about?
Won't be typing if I didn't.
And so Linda says she's a moon mother as well. Yes, I remember. It's all coming back to me now. It's just beautiful. So it's interesting because I haven't asked that question. Is Druidic something you are or something you do? But you seem to have grown up with this, having come from Tasmania via Sydney into the Nile Valley with no modern or very few modern conveniences while your house was being built. So,
well, I guess I was always drawn towards, I was one of those people. I never knew what I wanted to be when I grew up, and the Loretta nuns, they growing up in the 80s, which was just an awful time to come of age, really. There was just nothing here, and they used to steer us into the civil service or nursing or the bank. The bank was the other one, and it was like the good permanent pensionable jobs. And they used to tell us to, and in a way, because nuns I think are much maligned, but they had their own sort of way of surviving in the world, and they used to say to stay away from the guys in the JA pitches and sort of veer towards the guys, because heterosexual was your only option, was to veer towards the guys in the rugby club and the golf clubs, because they were more affluent. Yeah, because the women had to give up the work, when they got married, that was kind of, that was when that had gone since 1979, but it was residual, there was a residualness of it there. But so I was always drawn towards history and myth. I loved myth, and I found so much solace in myth, and I could find I just never, I never felt, I remember going camping up to Newgrange. This was before it was all, it was when you could go camping in the field. And just feeling this whole, the whole thing of the Trinity. Because I went back to college. I didn't go to college after school. I went back to college and I did humanities. And I studied theology and philosophy and psychology and a whole load of ologies. And I remember the Trinity, it made no sense to me whatsoever. And the whole patriarchalness of, it was a world, it was something, the society, it just made me feel crushed. And I couldn't reconcile that at all. Yet I felt incredibly spiritual, and I had this need to celebrate a spirituality. And so I used to read a lot around it, and I, the whole notion of a female deity made a lot more sense to me. Just does. It's. I mean, now I don't know about. I mean, I don't know where I am on God, or if there, or what God is, but I don't think even science can rule out God. But, there has to be, you have to allow space for a female, deity, So and Druidic did, and myth and all of the Celtic myths and Irish myths, that was so interwoven, and I just felt so at home there. And I could find answers there, for things. Yeah. And I could see it in the landscape, it was in the landscape around me. And I've always felt respecting, and again, that reverence thing for all creatures, for all beings, not just creatures, beings, you respected the she, so it's a reverence for all beings, whatever they are, we're not the only species on the earth. We're not the only species in the cosmos, So we have to respect what's there, So I don't know. I feel like I'm waffling on a bit now, but that's just where I felt at home. Yeah. And I did. I'm going through. I've done the bardic thing in OBOD, and I'm going to go through all of them, you know. But I'm not in any rush. I just enjoy it, you know. I actually do want to do more because, well, I'm drawn to the bardic anyway because I write a lot. But
You are a writer and a poet,
yeah.
playwright. Well, I listened to your play earlier, the radio play.
Oh,
I did, yes.
Yeah. And like I've always been drawn to writing as well. I've always felt that way to express myself. I'm very solitary. I think I'm probably a hermit in real life, you know. I think that would fit me. And then, but I'm not allowed to be because life gets in the way, you know. But I feel that drawn to sort of being a head druid and doing my thing and getting answers that way and sorting out life, you know. That's just where I feel at home. I don't know if I'm answering it any. And I want to do some more with music because you talked about singing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you go to a place where you feel unsure, you sing. I would like to get in touch more with my musical side. That's why I want to sort of do more in the bardic stuff, to do more musically first before I go doing all that stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have a personal practice, like a daily practice?
I do. Yeah, I do. I have in my garden a grove of trees. It's mostly ash, and it's mostly ash, but there are some mountain ash. And I have in the center, it's like a triple spiral on a stone in the center. And then I have all sorts of things representing, you know, east, west.
Yep.
And I go out there in the morning and I start in the east and I just do it around, and then I sit and I sing the Deer's Cry or a version of that to myself. Yeah. And that's it. That's kind of, and then I head off down the road in the car and get on with my day. And then the other part of what I would do daily on purpose, if you know what I mean, is I try very hard to record history, and I try very hard to lift women.
Okay.
Yeah, and I do that. I have this whole thing about the power of one, you know. Now, the power of the collective is amazing, but the power of one, you know, if we all did the power of one and fed into a collective, it would be fantastic. But the knock-on effect that one person can have, the ripple of that, just by, and it's just in how you, and I think in society, you know, women have fallen foul, I think, of the patriarchy in terms of blaming other women. And I think we need to grow now. So we need to learn to grow out of that and find a different way. So I just try and live that. I don't know if that makes any sense. I just try and practice it. Yeah. So I do that by, you know, by not getting involved in bitching sessions or just being, you know, in the kindnesses or, you know,
because
recognizing.
It was just feeding into that when I listened to your radio play or the narration of your radio. Obviously you had gone around interviewing elderly people in homes, had you, in care homes?
So what had happened with that was I'm part of this writing collective in Carr-Gomm. Carr-Gomm, like I was saying, the liminal place is such a hotbed of creativity. There is a little down, there's all these little medieval lanes that go down to the river. And one of them is called the Brewery Lane. And there is a little theatre down there, a little hidden away theatre. And there's amazing stuff that goes on there, from poetry to music to, you know, plays. I mean, the Clancy brothers, you know, that was their first stage. So there's a collective of writers there, and we used to meet once a month prior to COVID, but we continued on then during COVID on Zoom meeting and sharing our writing and supporting each other, really. And there's this amazing woman called Margaret O'Brien who coordinates all that. And there's another woman called Linda Fahey who runs a thing called the Tudor Artisan Hub, which is where she showcases the, creativity of the region for artists, writers. And they did a number of lockdown projects. So they started out over the first kind of lockdown, where they identified people in nursing homes who were, cocooned in nursing homes, and asked them to remember a time, like this. Because these are people who had survived the war and TB and, and this all had to be done in a time of COVID when you couldn't go and talk to people, so it was done, done very innovatively. One person interviewed them over the phone, got their story. So as the writers then were given, just given a tape of the interview. And we had to try and write a radio drama to sort of makes, to do them justice, really, and to try and just give a sense of the time. Yeah. So that was that play, I think, that you're talking about. I forget what it's even called.
It was. They don't want us to.
Yeah. So I got a woman who's I have never met her. I hope I get the privilege. And she is in a nursing home, and she's in her 80s. She is a widow, never had children. Her husband was a musician, and he played in Mick Delahunty's orchestra.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And she had a number of life experiences, including her father was a tailor, and he made their clothes from parachutes that he got in the war. And she had neighbors that had TB, and they weren't allowed to go to those friends' houses because she was told to stay away from them. And they had to live in special kind of wooden constructions in the back garden. And she was there in an upstairs room in the nursing home, looking out over the trees, waiting for her second jab, going, I cannot understand this, being confined to a room after living a full life, and yeah. And she was recounting all these stories. She had traveled a lot. She had met Princess Grace. She had met the Queen Mother. Yeah, she'd met the Pope, so, that's a life well lived, and now she's in the time of COVID. So we were trying to, just capture that. So,
well, I listened to it before we came on air, and it was fascinating. So what you should do on the Facebook is just put in the.
I will do. Yeah.
Which was I just thought really, really interesting. Just
it's lovely to do. Yeah, and. I know writers came out in force during COVID, and we all did a lot of poetry as well. Some of it with the COVID theme. I don't know if I ever want to do another COVID poem in my life again, but you do what you're inspired to do, don't you? That's why you. Yeah.
Just Zane says it's magic when performing music at nursing homes for people in them, because their spark returns and their cognitive capabilities are present, and holding their hands and sharing stories with them after the music. I just wish it lasted longer. So I assume that, Zane, that you were playing music. That's wonderful. I think they really had a tough time being cocooned and told to stay away. And Stephanie says, this is so emotional to hear about. The elderly should be celebrated every day. Their stories and experiences in their life are something we should all value. Well, they're the elders of our time. And I know my own mother, she's 85, well, she'll be 86 now in March. And she still lives at home, in her own home. And she was determined that she walked the streets that she always did. And I mean, behaved herself as well as she could. But luckily, it wasn't frightened. But how important it is to allow people to live as full a life as they possibly can. This is really hard. Well, actually, this is for all ages, actually, elderly and young people. This last year, do you have any poetry there that you'd like to share with our viewers?
I'm sure I do, Eimear. I'll open up something here for you. There is one poem that I was thinking there that I want to read. Actually, it's called "A Wild Woman," so I'll try and find.
Oh, lovely. We could do with a bit of that.
Yeah, Wild Woman. There it is. Oops, my thing is falling over. Sorry, I just have to. I've locked it again. Go down and open it up. Here it is. Okay, it's called Wild Woman. A shiny new breed of woman emerged from Jenkinstown Wood and stood where another had stood. A wild, wicked slip of a girl who burned too bright for the world. And they told her lies, ignored her cries. Let down your long hair, sure do, and the prince, he will take care of you. And cook and clean for the 7 little men. Wear yourself a slipper of glass. Be home before the witching hour and kiss the frog and then the beast. Sleep yourself on a feather bed while we test you with a pea. Then eat a poison apple and doze for a century. That curl in the middle of your forehead, well, it really is rather horrid. And your fate to be burned at stake. Ah, but the shiny new breed of a woman is a primal and natural creature, and one not bred for firewood. She is born of the witch that they could not burn, born of storm, lightning of heart, thunder of soul. You were wild once, she implores. Do not let them tame you. And when you notice her, for notice her you will, remember, she is a rare thing, fine as a bee's wing.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah,
it's beautiful. And I was just thinking when you said Jenkinstown, because that's the woods near me.
Yeah, I just stuck that in there. Depending on when I read it, I usually
okay.
Coolnamuck Wood is the wood near me, but yeah, so I just put that in. I was teasing you. Yeah.
It was just lovely. And you're getting lots of applauses here. It was just lovely. Wow. I mean, I could see all the fairy stories and very, very powerful.
Yeah. So I think it's important to be the voice of women sometimes. Yeah. Yeah.
And the wildness, and the wildness, and the wildness.
Yes. Don't be afraid to be wild. Yeah.
So speaking of wildness, somebody says, holy cow, listening to the poem, I got chills and shivers about the new woman. It's true. Lovely. That's great, Christine. Speaking of wild woman, what's the most reckless thing you've ever done?
Oh, goodness. Reckless. Probably, I mean, probably hitching home from a nightclub, you know, in white stilettos, with a feed of stag, so with a stag, yeah. Do you remember the stag? Yeah, do you remember that drink? It would just go through you, yeah. And I remember being picked up by a car full of guys, and I got in the back, and they had alcohol taken, and the guy in the back said, he put his arm around me, you know, and it was and I said, stop now, I don't know you from Adam, you know. And he said, I don't know you from me, but you know, and I ended up getting out of that car and going in over a ditch in the white stilettos. Yeah. So that was probably the most reckless thing I did. Yeah. It's kind of harmless now when I think about it. But yeah. See, I was the oldest Eimear, so I was always sensible sensible as hell. Yeah. Which is probably now why I'm writing poetry about wild women. I never really did too much out of the way. And I was, the red hair always gave me away as well. I remember one time we weren't allowed uptown at lunchtime in the Loretto, and sneaking uptown. Anytime I ever did anything wrong.
Oh, it's the red-haired girl. It's the red-haired.
Yeah, I got caught. Yeah. So I got discovered because some nun up in the chapel could see me going across the convent bridge.
This beacon. I was a redhead too, but I was a good girl. I never broke a rule. I just couldn't.
Yeah.
Because I was good in virtues, I was always afraid of getting caught.
Yeah. So I have this sensible gene. Yeah. So I can't say I've done another time, which I remember drinking poitín one night and driving home, which is pretty reckless. Yeah. Not to be recommended. Yeah.
Poitín is good for the joints or for this. So, what are you most proud of? Like, what's been your greatest achievement?
Gosh. I think, oh God, I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know what my greatest achievement is. I think, getting stuff published feels good. That's nice. But it is also very fleeting. I would write a poem. That poem, I would read it in 2 minutes. That I could have spent maybe 4 weeks on that. Yes. So it is very fleeting, and it's almost like, I'm very proud of my children, that's good. And, they didn't come easy, and, so that's something I'm very proud of. But it is very fleeting. You give birth to them and then they go. It's not, it's gone then, it's like it goes into the ether. But it feels nice to be, I guess, to be affirmed. There's an affirmation that comes in being published. Yeah. But I don't take it very seriously. It is, it is what it is. So I don't know what my greatest achievement was. Surviving, I've survived a lot. I've survived a lot in life. So I think surviving, I see myself as a survivor. I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud that I can be myself, and I'm not afraid to be myself. So, and I can do that without baiting it down people's necks. I like to think I can be myself by being myself. You know what I mean?
That's wonderful.
I'm very proud that I've done this, Eimear.
So you should be. Thank you. Do you have any regrets?
I'd love to live a life and not have regrets. Yeah. I grew up. I grew up in, I had, very dysfunctional family. And in a strange way, I'm very grateful for it, because I have, it has taught me to be, who I am. I have certain regrets around not telling them to go feck a lot sooner, but I've forgiven myself for that as well, because life is a journey, and you go through a journey, and it is where you go, you go where you go, and you go and how you go, and there's learning in all of it. So I really want to, when I pass over, to have had no regrets. That would be a lovely thing, I'd like to see them as learning lessons, because there's a learning in everything. Yeah.
It's like they say, you don't learn from experience, but you learn from your reflection on your experience.
Yeah.
If you can allow yourself that. Somebody, Red Roots says, I really admire your empathy for others. I naturally have a lot of compassion for animals and the natural world, but I'm trying to practice having empathy for other people. Is presence the secret?
presence, as in your presence, as
Yeah,
in being
not
present.
present, not as a
Yeah.
gift. You're actually present.
Yeah, I think empathy is a really important trait to give someone. I think you give someone no greater gift. You know, I think we have no place or right or entitlement to judge another person. Now, I know there, you know, I suppose it's the love of justice, you know, but it's not for us to stand in judgment, you know. So people cross our paths every day, and I mean, I work in a library, so I meet people there all day, every day. You know, I deal with the public all day, every day. And I don't know what's going on for anybody that stands in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
But I can give them due respect, and I can listen to their story of the day. You know, I can do that. You know, that's the least I can do. You know, what's that one? I mean, I'm sure there's a biblical quote. I don't want to be... there go I, you know.
For the grace of God.
Yeah, or the least of my brethren, or whatever. Yeah. So giving, you have to mind yourself as well. You can't be giving yourself to, you know, you have to mind yourself. You know, you can actually, minding yourself is the greatest thing you can do. Mind yourself before you mind anyone else. You know, mind yourself and live that. If you live by your being. I don't know.
I think so. And that's not a selfish thing. And Lisa says forgiveness of self has a lot to do with caring for people. I think so, because I think if you can forgive yourself, you're suspending that judgment of self. And then you're on the road to suspending judgment of others. It is learning to laugh. And of course, empathy is not about feeling what somebody else is feeling, but it's understanding it from their point of view, even if it isn't yours. So it's about getting out of the way and hearing the person from their point of view, whether you agree with it or not. And I think most what we want is to be heard from our point of view. No, in the moment, no matter how unreasonable we are.
Yeah.
I'm stuck in this, I'm hurt, angry, upset about whatever. And all I want you to do is listen from my perspective. Don't put the other person's in at this point. There may be when I've been sufficiently heard or I felt I've been understood, then I'm in a position to go and look at an alternative perspective. But if I'm all the time wanting to be understood myself, it's very hard then to learn to understand somebody else. So that's the gift I think empathy is. And that's being fully present, as in you're there, you're present to them and taking yourself out of the way.
Yeah, listen with empathy. I think, you know, that from Alibaba and the 40 Thieves, the empty vessels make most noise. It's like, do unto others as you, I don't know. I have something really profound to say. I'm just trying to get it out. Yeah. Like, you know, I often say it would be a great world if there was nobody in it, you know, on my most challenging days, you know, and I want to go off crying in the woods wounded and I want to live as a hermit. Do you know what I mean? But we bring ourselves every day. People come into our lives. It's an honor and a privilege. And it's an honor and a privilege to live on the earth and to breathe the air that we do and, you know, wash ourselves and drink the water. So we need to approach life like that.
I think so.
I'm preaching now.
No, that's okay. Tabitha says 100%. It's a bit of storytelling. I weave a story of why this person has done X, Y, or Z, and then it makes it easier to be kind. Yeah, I think Gabriella says being forgiven by other people and being allowed to grow helps someone to be more flexible with others and what they do and what they go through. End of the day, we all go through stuff. That's so true.
You see, like, there are so many colors, creeds, shapes, sizes, difference in the world. It's like what I was saying about liminal places and being on the edges and in the margins of things. We're all equal just different. And we need to celebrate and respect difference, and not be afraid of it. There is, we're all corralled by society, by the patriarchy, by commerce, by everything. We're servants of 101 things to behave in certain ways and do certain things, but you have to be true to yourself, be to your own self, be true. And respect people and say your piece and go in peace, I think.
Yeah.
Don't be browbeating people.
I think that's our peace prayer, starting with self into our grove and then outside. So Mawie, we have come to the end of our time. So I'm going to end with my usual questions. We could have gone on more. We could have gone on and on and on and on to talk about this. Zane says, paying attention to how you show up for others with respect to empathy and still caring for the self by setting appropriate boundaries. I think so. It's absolutely, Zane. Very wise words. Mawie, what is your favorite season of the year, and what is your favorite ceremony, mark the wheel of the year?
I like my favorite season of the year is the one I'm in, actually, whenever I'm in it. I like them all. Do I have a favorite? I'm drawn to water this year, so I'm feeling I'm just going to be. There's a theme of water for me this year. I don't know why, but I'm just drawn to water this year. Midsummer maybe. But I love midwinter. Yeah, I love midwinter. Yeah. And Samhain. I love Samhain. I mean, I love them all. So, but I think midsummer. I tend to be very sad at midsummer because the year is turning and, so there's a sadness too. But I think there's something I need to celebrate in it this year. So, yeah.
It's interesting because I look forward to the longest day. And then I know, once we do, well, we've got another few more months. I'm not even going there to consider that we're going into the dark time of the year. And then when I'm in here, it's lovely.
Yeah.
I know, and says, Mawie, very much the same. My favorite season is the one I'm in. Feel the feels, live the living, and enjoy it all.
Live in the moment. Live now. The future is a perception. Yeah. The past is also a perception. Live now. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So Salve says, I feel to really find your raw, authentic self, we must make many choices, but that the one that serves spirit and soul evolution is to indeed choose the path of silence and being alone in nature. Absolutely. So, Mawie, you've been an absolutely delightful guest. And thank you so much for coming on this chat this evening. I really, really appreciate it. And I know that judging by the comments in the chat here, that people have enjoyed it too. So I'll allow you to say goodnight. And then I know you'll just go backstage. And then after I say goodbye, we'll go and read the comments. And then, because there's so many.
Okay. Eimear, Gurmila Maha, I really enjoyed it. It was lovely. Lovely to get the call today. I really appreciate it. It was nice to spend time with you. Great to have a chat. Sorry if I waffled on too much about my
Somebody said in the chat after you said that that they love a good waffle. So
it was nice. Yeah, it was good. So it was lovely and safe. Stay safe, everybody. Stay well. Stay good. Good things. Wish you all good things. Thank you for.
You're welcome. And I'll just say goodbye to everybody now. So listen, thank you all so much for your wonderful comments, your questions. I really, really appreciate it. It always makes it so much more alive to have this. And I look forward to seeing you next week for another Fireside Chat. In the meantime, be safe, be well. Until then, slán go fóill.